G'day everybody and welcome to another video. In my last video we talked about some of the mistakes that we've made along the way on my boat rebuild, and we talked about some of the theories behind using different resins, different MEKP levels and everything else, and a few other issues that we're going to get into a little bit later. But what I want to do now, that was sort of a theory based chat that we had before, but what I want to do is I want to put it into practical terms. So I want to be able to mix up some resin with some MEKP. I want to mix it at 1%, 1.5%, 2%, 3%, and this one's for the sun. We're going to stick that one out there in the sun to see what it does, see what how it changes differently to the rest of them. So maybe it won't change differently, maybe it'll look exactly the same as all of the rest of them, but I highly doubt it. So we're going to measure them. So the ambient temperature at the moment, this is in degrees Celsius guys, is 30 degrees Celsius. Basically our metric system is 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright, so as soon as what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pour some resin into this little cup, and we're going to make sure that they're all even, or as even as I can possibly get them, and then we're going to weigh them, add our MEKP to it at all those different percentages, and see what sort of a difference we get. I have no idea. Well, I do. I've seen it happen before, not in this sort of lineup, but in glassing situations. So what I want to do is basically do a whole heap of experiments as well. Try a few different things, see how it reacts, and you know, just as a learning curve or a little bit of an experiment for everybody. See if we can make things a little bit more fun than just doing some fiberglassing work and everything. Sort of gets a bit boring. So what I want to do, first thing, measure some of this resin out. This is a Vinyl Ester resin, Vinyl Ester laminating resin. I'm going to put a bit in there. I'm going to make sure that I get the same quantity on all 5 cups. But what we want to do is see if we can see any mechanical difference between them as well. Essentially belting with a big hammer. I'll beat that out in a minute. So that's probably a tad too much, so I'm going to pour a little bit of that one into there. Alright, let's weigh that out. So we have to, you know what, I made a boo-boo guys. So one of the things that you always do when you're working with these sort of resins is you've got to weigh it out, but when you do, we've got to make sure that that's zeroed out. So that's zeroed out with an empty cup on it, so we know that it's taken that cup into consideration. So the cup weighs about 13 grams, we take that off, and there we go. So if we put this on there now, we'll get the true weight of the resin inside the cup. Now what I want is about 100 grams. So if I can see how accurate I can be here. Ooh, 116. 100, oh man! How good is that? 100 grams, spot on 100 grams. Something that I should say too is one of the other issues that I've run into on the boat when I'm trying to do this sort of stuff is having these scales up on an uneven surface or a surface that's not solid. So what it can do sometimes is those little measurements that we're looking at there, they can change. So just to clarify that, I'm going to take that off of the table right now. I'm going to put it down on the ground and see if there's any difference. 100 grams. So that's pretty spot on. Now what we've got to do is try and get all of the other ones exactly the same. I'm just going to mark it there. Pretty damn close, I would say. Do the same with these other ones over here. So the thing that we want to see is the chemical reaction, and see if there's something that we can spot within that chemical reaction that's different to everything else. Should have gone a bit under, but doesn't matter. How good is this old guy? Hey? I reckon that's pretty close. That's about as close as we're ever going to get it, guys. Something that I should have mentioned. So what we're looking for is the exothermic reaction. to try and work out whether or not we can see any difference between the 5 different specimens that we've got. We're going to measure the temperature between those and see what happens. So what we've got is my MEKP in a syringe. The reason that I've chosen to use a syringe is I want to try and get it as accurate as possible. I don't want to be trying to use one of them little puffer little doovalacky things that we always use. So I'm going to use the syringe, see how accurate we can get this, and we're going to drop it all in there. Just drop the drop in there, and then we're going to go through and stir them, and let's see what happens. I don't know how bad this is going to be, or what sort of reaction we're going to get at that 3%er. I reckon that's going to get pretty hot. Whether it's going to start smoking or not, I don't know. There's a high possibility, there's a high chance that it may actually melt that cup. Let's see what happens. Only one way to find out, eh? So I've got a tip. Now, I went off to grab my calculator there before, but then I realised, hang on, I've got 100 grams of product in each of those cups. What's 1% of 100 grams? 1 mil. Alright, so let's see how close we can get this. We'll tip him in there. Oh, my eyes aren't so great. Alright, that's all that is. 1 mil. Now 1.5 is going to be a bit tricky. So we're going to go down, we're going to go 1, somewhere in between. 1.5 is about there. I'm going to come over this one. We're going to go 2. We're going to go 15, down a teensy-wincy little bit. And then 3. Right. So, I should be turning that around, but then I can't see it. So you guys are going to have to miss out. You're just going to have to trust me. 1, 2, 3. It's not much, is it? And for this one that's going out in the sun, we're going to do it at 2. So we're going to go, oops, my fingers are sticking. 1, 2. Alright? Give that a stir. First thing we notice is it starts to change colour, and it'll continue to do the same thing. I can't really get to the bottom all that well. I'm hoping that it's going to get all the way through. Now what I don't want to do is contaminate the next sample with this one. So I'm going to have to use different sticks all the way through. Hope you guys can hear that. Alright. I hope that sits up properly without falling over. Is that straight there, mate? Then I'll stir this one. Now you can see some aeration starting to start on the top there, where our chemical is doing its thingamajig. This is at 1.5%, somewhere thereabouts anyway. We tried to be as accurate as we can, but I can't promise too much. My scales aren't calibrated either. Oh, hang on. My scales aren't calibrated either. So basically, we got to put up with what we got to put up with. Give that a nice stir. All right. Should be enough. Same again. I'm going to use a different stick. Should have had these prepared. Don't matter. Another 3. What do we got here? Is 2%. Mixing them up. Can you see any colour change there now? Any bubbles? Okay. Now obviously there's going to be different times surrounding these because I've had to go from one to the other, stirring one at a time, so they're not going to be, you know, we can't compare them too closely anyway. It's probably a couple of minutes between the first one and the last one, I'd reckon. Have a look at the air in that one. See the difference? See how that's really starting to air up a bit? There's something you got to be careful of too, is what you don't want to do is over aerate some of these resins, either because you'll just be standing there forever trying to get the air out of them with your little roller, doing your job. Alright, now this one here is the one we're going to stick out in the sun. So give him a good stir, get him going. Try and get her from around all the sides and the bottom and everything else, what we normally do when we're on the boat or wherever we are when we're doing our fiberglassing work. That one looks like it's foamed up a fair bit or something. See how high it's come up the cup? Maybe it's the chemical reaction, the heat, something to do with that. I don't know. Looks like Coca-Cola right now, eh? Sort of a flattish version of Coca-Cola. Now this one here I'm going to take out and I'm going to stick it in the sun. Just going to put that down on the ground there very carefully. I should probably have something underneath that in case it spills, but yeah, actually there's a piece of cardboard over there. Right. So essentially we start at about 30 degrees Celsius. Alright, that's the ambient temperature here at the moment. I think what you can see from the one that's at 3% is it's already way ahead. It's sitting up there at 40 degrees Celsius already. It's getting quite warm quite quickly. The one at 1.5% is creeping up a little bit, but it's not too bad. Alright guys, so I wanted to show you this one here. Have a look at that. I reckon that cup's going to melt any moment now, eh? Ooh. Okay. I reckon we might have a bit of a problem with our thermometer. I think she's just lost the plot, guys. She's doing a lot. Well, let's forget about that one for a minute. Just probably steer clear of that. But let's go back over here. Let's have a look at the 1%er. So at 1%, we've got 35 degrees Celsius. So essentially that's only a couple of degrees higher than our ambient temperature. Our ambient temperature was 30. We go across to 1.5%. So you got, can you guys hear that? So that'll give you some idea. Oh yeah. Our plastic is starting to melt at 3%. Whoa, there she goes. The resin itself is still in position. That wrapped around itself, so that thermometer there went from 120 degrees and just kept going. I highly doubt it's at 100 and what is that, 200 odd degrees Celsius. I'd say you should just pack it in. So the 1%, again, about 35 degrees Celsius. 1.5% is sitting on 40 degrees Celsius. 2% is almost close to 50 degrees Celsius. And our 3% is just gone off the scale, guys. It's absolutely gone. It's melted the cup. It's, yeah, that's a solid block now. But the reason that we don't do that is, firstly, one, we don't want to start fires, and secondly, typically when the resin heats up so quickly and it gets so hot it becomes brittle. So you don't want that in a structural element anywhere. Oh, where's that one in the sun? I can pick that up now. You can have a look at that. See, you've got different colours as well throughout this. Now that might be a bit of the plastic being mixed in there with the resin, the Vinyl Ester resin and everything. Very foamy on top. Looks like a can of Coke or something like that, but I certainly wouldn't drink it. So that's the one that was in the sun at 2%. That's the one that was in the shade at 2%. Very important. That is starting to creep up there now too. So that's at, I've got to put my eyes on. That's at 75 degrees Celsius, if we can rely on that. That should be starting to get very foam shortly. If I grab me one of my paddle pop sticks, I'll walk around the other side there. Put my mask on. Yep, it's pretty much gelled off, starting to go hard. This one here at 1.5, nah, look at that. Big time difference. We really didn't time this very well, did we, Bradley? We completely forgot about it, guys. We just got so damn excited that we forgot to time it all and see how long this takes, but that's not important anyway for this experiment. The whole idea of this experiment is show you the difference between them. The amount of heat that can be drawn into these chemical reactions is pretty cool. And this is what happens when you work out in the sun. Whenever you're doing any fiberglassing work under cover or in the shade, or if you can get some sort of a UV stabilizer or another system that works better, and go for it. Unless you go down to these really low MEKP levels, I can feel it starting to sludge up at the bottom there. Starting to go. Change my stick. That one pretty much, oh no, very, very similar, I guess. Is that starting to crackle too? Oh, look at that, you can see the smoke coming off of that one. Wow, that's at 2%. Maybe I dropped a little bit more than that in there. Something to keep in mind with all of this was all done as an experiment to try and have a look at, you know, the different MEKP levels, how it's going to react. But there's something that we need to think about here, and that's the fact that this resin and the MEKP is contained within a cylindrical environment, and there's nothing else in there. There's no fillers, there's no binders, and there's no fiberglass. So it'll potentially be a different scenario if we were to have that with fiberglass, because it'd spread out over a larger area. So we've got a very considerable amount of resin there, very small container, and as you can see, she's heated up quite quick, even at 2%. Now, I mix my resins at 2% all the time, and I've never had a problem like that. And like I say, it's because it's spread out over a far greater surface area. But that gives you a bit of an idea, I reckon. Have a look at the bubbles on top of that. I reckon at some stage we'll do another one, and we'll do it with the glass and everything else, and do it properly. But I just wanted to show you the exothermic reaction, or everything getting hot, everything getting to the point where we get our chemical reactions, and it all does its little trick. Once that's set off, what we're going to do is we're going to take them all out, take them out of this plastic, we're going to belt them with a hammer and see if we can see any real difference. I reckon this is going to be very brittle. I reckon that's going to smash apart quite easily. I reckon this one's going to be quite tough, and that one, I'm not really sure. A lot of the research suggests that the longer it takes to actually cure, the longer the molecular structure becomes, but there's always a point where you can't saturate all of the resin in there. So if you've got unsaturated resin inside of that cup, then that'll be a weak point as well. So you've got to keep that in mind. Alright guys, sweet. Let's come back to when this is all dried up, and we'll start belting it with a hammer and have a bit of fun with it, eh? What do you reckon? Sweet. It's been about 3 hours since we mixed this resin at 1%, and have a look at this. This is pretty important. That is still hasn't gone off, guys. So at 1%, the Vinyl Ester resin has not gone off. It's a little bit jelly. It might go off overnight. We'll check that in the morning. But it's been about 3 hours, and in my books that's a bit of a problem. So here we are, the morning after we had a little bit of a playtime. Now, what are the chances that you think the Vinyl Ester resin mixed at 1% actually went off and did its job? Let's have a look. Let's find out. So there we have it, guys. That's the vinyl ester resin that was mixed at 1% MEKP, and as you can see, it did not go off. So probably not something that we want to come across when we're trying to put it into our boats or anything else, any other fiberglassing project that we might have. That's a vinyl ester resin, possibly different with the polyester resins and everything else, but 1%, this particular vinyl ester resin, not so great. 1.5%, 2%, then we've got the resin that was in the sun and the resin that was mixed at 3%. Now, what do you think one of the things that really stands out in amongst all of these resins? The thing for me anyway is the air, or the bubbles, or the what's left after the air has finally escaped out of these samples. If you have a close look at it, we can see that the resin that was mixed at 3% has quite a bit of air, and then as we go through it seems to reduce. So basically, what is that telling us? Is that the chemical reaction? Is it the heat? The fact that we didn't roll it out? Probably a combination of all of those things, but it's very, very visible that the amount of air that's in the 1.5% is not a great deal. There's not a lot of it there. Then it starts to increase at 2%, a little bit more at that's the one that was in the sun, and this one here was the one that was mixed at 3%. So you can see there that there's quite a bit of air that's tried to escape out of that, and it's made a bit of a mess. I don't know, looks pretty cool really, but there you go. I didn't know that that was going to be the case. I had no idea that that was going to be like that, but it certainly probably made a bit of a difference to how I'm going to continue to roll out things. Probably just pay a little bit more attention to it, make sure that all of that air that we're looking at right there is managed out of our projects.